Hello everybody, this is Avery from the Battle BrotherCast. Just a quick announcement, we have a new email. So if you would like to email us about something we're doing wrong or something we're doing right, or just to let me know I have a sexy voice or something, up to you I guess, that will be posted on the episode link. That's going to be the battlebrothercast@gmail.com. Once again, that is the battlebrothercast@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about where we're going, what you'd like to see, anything and everything. Thank you, and Ave Imperator. Episode...
Today, we're talking about the Iron Warriors. Avery, take it away. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
The Iron Warriors! Thank you very much. Okay, Perturabo and the Iron Warriors. Honestly, one of my favorite legions, and one of my favorite legions that fell from the Emperor's grace, as you could say. They are led by their Primarch, Perturabo, who is also known as the Lord of Iron, the Hammer of Olympia, the Breaker. He is a pretty well-known, reputable character in 40k, as he's one of the 20 Primarchs. I would like to start this off with a prayer written by Perturabo. From iron cometh strength, from strength cometh will, from will cometh faith, from faith cometh honor, from honor cometh iron. This is the Iron Litany, and it forever shall be. This is the theme song. This is the mantra of the Iron Warriors. Iron Warriors excelled at siegecraft. They were the best at laying siege to anything, ever. But first we should talk about Perturabo himself. He landed on the planet of Olympia once the gods of chaos did all their warpy shit in the Himalayan mountains when the Emperor was growing his sons from test tubes.
Right.
He was taken in by the tyrant of...
the Damikos.
The tyrant Damikos, yep. Damikos, sure.
Right.
He was used, once everybody realized how amazing he was at making things, he was used to make siege weapons, to make weapons of mass destruction, to improve battle lines, and, but all the while, Perturabo just didn't like being a weapon of war. He wanted to create, he wanted to build. And every time he brought this up to his father, his adoptive father, they, started yelling at each other. And people generally don't yell at Primarchs for too long.
I'm surprised. I have a question. Is it not canon that he would constantly fight with the Damikos over, you're not my actual father. My actual father is in space?
Kinda, yeah. He didn't know for sure, but, he
canonically,
knew, obviously, Damikos was his father.
Canonically, Perturabo literally yelled, "You're not my real dad!" At the tyrant king of... Is his name Damikos, or is that his title?
No, I'm pretty sure that's his name.
It says, they brought him before the Damikos.
I'm pretty sure that was his name, but I could be wrong.
The Damikos. His name is Damikos, but he has people refer to him as the Damikos, because he's in fact the tyrant.
Yeah, no,
as the tyrant king, I must refer to myself as the Damikos.
Everybody has to refer to me in the third person.
Always. Except for Perturabo, because he's scary.
Yes. So yeah, there were a couple of recorded instances of Perturabo making sketches at his workbench, and his father coming in and, ooh, what nonsense have you created this time? And Perturabo just being like, why are you so mean to me? You're not my real dad.
Literally, why are there no, Arya Winnin's sons involving Perturabo and Damikos?
If there were, Perturabo wouldn't have been even close to as dickish as he was throughout the rest of the 40k continuum.
Good point.
So, I guess they needed some spurring destruction that originated from daddy issues.
Like most of these. Everyone here in every Primarch has some form of daddy issues.
You aren't wrong. So, like I said, Perturabo was not loved, but in a way, he was respected because he was a Primarch and he demands respect.
He was big and scary.
Authority. Yes, he was big and scary. And then the Emperor landed, and Perturabo immediately bent the knee to the Emperor and pledged himself to the Emperor. Right. And then Perturabo met his brothers, and the rest of his brothers just didn't like him because Perturabo is a douchebag. And this was very obvious to the rest of the Primarchs. The only other Primarch that Perturabo even kind of got along with was Magnus the Red.
Because they were nerds!
Because they were nerds. Magnus and Perturabo used to go on, like, archaeology digs together, like, throughout the ruins of old Earth. And they were just a bunch of fucking nerds. That was it. That's the only other person Perturabo ever felt comfortable around. But
what about, Calliope? His adopted sister.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm talking about, like, important
Primarchs
people.
In general, yes.
Yeah.
Important people. Not the family not family. As a rule, family dies for character development, and that's
Exactly. Pretty much. Always. So Perturabo also had this thing going on that was kind of like a mutation that happened when he got teleported off Terra, where he could see the Eye of Terror always. The Eye of Terror being the massive rift in real space that, like, perpetrates all the fucking demons and shit.
It is like the space hell butthole thing at the center of the galaxy that is the source of all that is wrong.
Yeah, kinda. It was the thing that was generated by the birth of Slaanesh that we talked about previously. It's literally a hole. It's like if a black hole had a black hole inside the black hole, and then also hell was a thing that was seeping through the black hole.
Yes. So Perturabo was always standing under the purple sun of ultra space hell.
Yes. And he brought this up to Magnus. And Magnus was like, that's a little fucking weird. So Perturabo immediately went, okay, cool, so there goes that friendship. Because Perturabo had social anxiety. Don't we all, though? So eventually Go ahead.
Maybe that's why he was a dick this whole time.
No,
Because he was just scared. No. Aside from all of the other things, but like reason...
aside from the other problems.
Yes, aside from the other problems, there's like a aside from the giant dictionary-sized list of problems, one of the other problems is that he just didn't know how to do people.
Yeah.
Because that's an overarching theme of just, I am Perturabo, I'm a cold engine of logic, people are weird and gross and they don't understand me because I'm a cold engine of logic, and squishy nerd, I don't like squishy people, they're gross, I like concrete and steel and explosions.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because that's like an overarching thing of Perturabo.
Yeah.
So what if, hear me out, Perturabo just had Perturabo, aside from being the Emperor's technical skill and pride, was also this very small, very repressed part of the Emperor that feared other people, that other people wouldn't understand what he was. And so he just kind of spent all of his life acting on that, and like the cold engine of logic can't really process people well because people don't always follow logic and order.
Right.
So it makes sense that Perturabo, being the great engineer and ultimate mega science nerd, would not be very skilled at non-murderous diplomacy.
Yeah, no, that's very good insight, and something I hadn't really thought of. I just thought he was a douchebag.
See, I am a science nerd. I know this feeling.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's an essential element of being functional in society is learning how to overcome it.
Yeah. Got a good point there. So, eventually, Perturabo would be reunited with his legion, the 4th Legion, the Iron Warriors. And the Iron Warriors were pretty good at this point at laying siege to shit, but they kind of had a bad tradition of, like, Death Guard-style attrition warfare, where they would just kind of throw themselves until whatever they were throwing themselves at stopped shooting at them. And this led to a lot of casualties. And particularly, one engagement, prior to the reuniting of Perturabo and his legion, was drastically above and beyond the casualties that they took. And
Caladian is what it was called.
Yes. And
29,000 dudes.
Yeah. It was a bad one.
Yeah.
Considering Perturabo's legion estimated around 100,000 men, that's more than a quarter of them dead in a single engagement.
Yeah.
So when Perturabo heard about this, he was not happy. He ordered... this is in actual history, there's this thing that the Romans used to do called decimation, where basically you drew stones, and whoever got the discolored stone was basically it, like in a game of tag, you're it, right? Mm-hmm. Only instead of playing tag, 9 of your other friends beat you to death with sticks. And that's what Perturabo did to his legion. He had a 10th of the legion get beaten to death by the other legionnaires. This was just to serve as a reminder to never again do shit like that again, and to instill this sense of iron will into his legion. He forced it upon them.
How dare you sacrifice yourselves needlessly? Kill one. I'm gonna have you all draw straws, and the guy who draws the short straw, you are beating him to death. All of you. 1, 2, 3, 10. 1, 2, 3, 10. Repeated for however many legionaries are left. And as he's standing above a 10th of his legion, just beaten to death, and let that be a lesson to you to never sacrifice, to value the lives of your legionaries with more care than you have done previously. As he has ordered a 10th of his legion beaten to death.
Yes. The hypocrisy is very, very apparent.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yes.
Fucking idiot. Whatever.
Yes.
So the Iron Warriors would continue on to the Great Crusade, and they would excel at siege warfare. They were deployed on the sieges that would not end. They were deployed on the battlefields that would drag on for years and decades. And because they were there, they would wrap up in months, days. They were literally the greatest at laying siege ever. Rogel Dorn could build them, sure, but Perturabo could definitely knock them down.
Right.
Throughout this whole crusade, though, because they were deployed on these really long engagements, there was no glory. There was no honor. They just kind of sat there, and they shot things at other things, and they were all kicked around as like, ooh, better send the Iron Warriors, we're tired of fighting this fight. So there was a degree of resentment that was growing between the Iron Warriors and the other legions. So much so that the other legions didn't really want to be around Perturabo. They didn't even credit Perturabo and his legion in some victories. They just said, like, other ally, or fellow warrior.
The Iron Warriors just got et al'd.
Yes, exactly, because nobody liked them.
So, does that mean that the shovel jokes are canon?
Yes.
They used to just go dig a trench, loser.
Pretty much. Especially the Imperial Fists. The Imperial Fists and the Iron Warriors, there was severe resentment between these two formations, as they despised each other the entire time. It was not a new thing when the heresy kicked off. The entire time. They fucking hated each other. There were actual units in the Iron Warriors that excelled at firing siege cannons and, like, siege guns. It was called the Stor Bazashk, and it's literally what they did, is they fired cannons. And in the heresy, their leader, they called him the Stone Rot, because he could just look at the ground and, like, touch it and know exactly where to dig a trench that would lead to the most significant deployment of troops and cannon to win a battle. Like, these guys were no joke. Like, I love this shit so much. Siege warfare
is very cool.
Siege warfare is very interesting in the 41st millennium, and, I mean, this is really more in the 30th millennium, but very interesting. It still counts. Yeah.
The technology hasn't changed at all.
It hasn't. Stagnation.
The change of technology is bad in heresy.
Exactly. So let's move on to the Horus Heresy a little bit, because there was an event that really trickled down into why the Iron Warriors betrayed the Emperor.
Right.
Essentially, there was a civil war that broke out on Olympia, and it got bad. And Perturabo basically had to put the torch to his own planet. And this was a big deal, because at this time, every Primarch kept and, like, held secure the planet that they landed on, that they were raised on. Except Alfarius, maybe? We don't know. Nobody knows.
We know nothing about them.
We know nothing about them. Them, plural, maybe?
Yes.
Question mark. I am Alfarius.
We are Alfarius.
We're just gonna continue to make Alfarius jokes in every single fucking episode, despite not talking about goddamn Alpha Legion for another goddamn 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever.
Oh, absolutely we are. Because there is no proof that the Alpha Legion is not responsible for everything. There's no proof that there were not 20 Primarchs. It was just Alfarius and or Omegon dressing up in a bunch of different costumes.
Yeah.
There may not even be an Emperor for all we know. For all we know, that could be a persona that was created by Alfarius and or Malkador. We don't know.
Or Omegon.
Yes. There is no proof to the contrary.
So, because Perturabo had to put his planet to the torch and murder most of the people living there, he knew that was an act that was irredeemable. That he thought that the Emperor was going to punish him for taking that action. And all of a sudden, he got a interesting communication from Horus. The War Master, good old Horus. That said, hey bro, listen, I know you just did that. Listen, come talk to me in Fulgrim. We'll have a conversation. I think we got a solution to your problem. And Perturabo, being very distraught at this point, said, "What harm could it do? Let's hear Horus out." And the seeds of corruption were sown, and slowly but surely, Perturabo came around to the War Master. I called him the War Master. My bad.
No, continue. That's good. No. We can't call him the Horn Master. What are we supposed to call Fulgrim then?
Fair enough. So he came around to the War Master's point of view, and along with the Word Bearers, the Night Lords, and the Alpha Legion, when the call came out that Horus was a traitor, intercept him with reinforcing the Raven Guard, the Salamanders, and the Iron Hands.
Yes.
When that call came around, Perturabo knew it was go time. So, Istvan 5, the traitor legions are pinned down by the vanguard of the Emperor's justice. Perturabo and his legion deploy a fucking fortress barricade behind the Salamanders. Or was it? Yeah.
When you say fortress barricade,
I mean they dropped it from orbit and set up a mobile fortress with cannons on it and shit from orbit.
I'm just imagining just a literal fucking mile-high concrete wall just...
So they were, like I said, they're very good at siegecraft. They had shit ready to go. They could drop fucking pre-made fortifications wherever they went. And that's what they did. They set up a whole rear guard behind the Vanguard Legions as like a firing base. Because that's what they
just
did.
They just set it up so that way they put like a pillbox with a heavy machine gun, a heavy machine gun bolter thing at the top of a hill, World War II, exactly. Omaha Beach style.
But think of D-Day Normandy invasion. They dropped that shit from orbit. That's how fucking advanced siege warfare they were. They're fucking cool, man. I don't know what to tell you.
That's awesome. That's so dumb, but it's so cool.
Yes, I agree. So when a single red flare rose above the fighting engaged legions on Istvan 5, the Iron Warriors opened up their great fucking firing base into the rear flank of the advancing or the retreating Vanguard Loyalist legions, and they opened fire, and they mowed down quite a few loyalists that day. After this engagement and the death of Ferrus Manus that we covered last week, Ferrus Manus's warhammer, Forgebreaker, that was made by Fulgrim, was given as a gift to the Lord of Iron, as a gift. Yeah. We appreciate you, Perturabo, said Horus. Said nobody else. Horus said it a little louder, and then everybody else mumbled it under their breath. We appreciate you, Perturabo. Yeah.
It was like, now everyone say, he's like, here, as our thanks. Horus is just staring at everyone else is just kind of looking away. Conrad Kurz is trying to whistle, but it sounds like... It's like, thank you, everyone say thank you, Perturabo. Thank you, Perturabo.
Yes, I like to imagine that's exactly how this conversation went.
And at that moment, Perturabo almost kind of smiled.
Yeah.
Almost. Kind of. Maybe. His face twitched very slightly. To the point where only the other Primarchs with their enhanced psyker senses could tell that Perturabo smiled for like a millionth of a second.
Yes. So, yes, this gave Perturabo much joy, many happy. So the Horus Heresy would continue, the Iron Warriors would fight alongside the Traitor Legions, and, mainly, though, they were more focused on killing some Imperial Fists, because they had this grudge to settle over who was superior, the Iron Warriors or the Imperial Fists. And they would go from planet to planet to planet, destroying Imperial Fist fortifications until the ultimate siege came about. The Siege of Terra, baby!
Yes. And so thus... No, continue.
This was the culmination of the entire Horus Heresy. The objective of the entire betrayal was to get Horus on the throne. Or maybe Magnus, maybe Perturabo, probably not Fulgrim.
Definitely not Angron.
Definitely not Angron.
Not Angron!
Mortarion smelled too bad. Conrad Kurth is probably already dead, I don't know. Nobody's seen him in fucking ages. I think he was dead at this point.
Oh yeah, right, he was assassinated already.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was, because there were Night Lord contingents at the siege, but like the Nightfall, the Primarch, the lead ship of the Night Lords was there.
Yeah.
And like some scattered warbands, but not too much. So anyway, the Iron Warriors and Perturabo specifically were the heralds of the siege. They were the ones coordinating the entire effort, because Horus understood that this was literally what Perturabo was made for. That this would be the final battle, and he knew he needed Perturabo to break Dorne's defenses, because at this point, Dorne had been spending the last 7 years reinforcing the Imperial Palace and the area around it. So, Fulgrim was going to need all the shit he could muster for this. Now,
Fulgrim needs that most of the time.
Yeah. Did I say Fulgrim? I meant Perturabo. You know what? You know what fucking
No. The image is funnier. Fulgrim is like, I will lead the siege of Terra.
Oh, fuck
and Perturabo just sits there silently fuming, just like... And then Horus like, hey, Perturabo, you know who built those buildings? Dorne built those buildings. Dorne built those buildings. You want to make those buildings not be there anymore? Dorne built those buildings. Just breathing heavily, and everyone, including Angron, just kind of staring at Perturabo for the first time, just kind of frothing at the mouth. It's like, Dorne buildings.
Oh, this audio is going to be really fun to edit. Thanks, Anizia.
Oh, absolutely. You're welcome.
So, while we're talking about the siege, let's talk about some of the more important Iron Warrior players in it. Like Horus, those of you who might know, Horus had an inner council called the Mournival, where he had 4 Luna Wolves, Sons of Horus, basically be his counselors, be his voices of reason.
The group chat.
Yeah, he had a group chat of friends, best friends. Perturabo had a very similar thing called the Trident. And the Trident was made up of 3 warsmiths, warsmith being the title of the captains of the Iron Warriors companies. Mm-hmm. And these 3 warsmiths would give Perturabo advice, help him develop siege plans, and very similarly just be there for the Primarch. At the time of the Siege of Terra, the 3 members of the Trident were Barbin Falk, who was at this point kind of possessed by a demon, I guess. He just referred to himself as the Warsmith, and was really weird. He would kind of stare off into distance and talk out of the side of his mouth. He got weird. He was cool though. Before that, there was Foryx, who was the first captain of the company, the first company captain. Foryx was very politically engaged, you might say, where he was always kind of scheming. That's a very big thing in the Iron Warriors. Everybody's scheming all the time, which is strange because they dig ditches. What the fuck are you scheming about?
Well, I mean, politics is important when you're when you smell of dirt and entitlement, politics is a very, very relevant thing, as I'm sure you know. Very, very obviously.
Yes, fair enough.
Right.
So, and Foryx was important throughout the entire Horus Heresy, the entire Great Crusade. He was always a member of the Trident ever since he was promoted to the position of First Company Captain. Even after the Heresy, he continued to be important to not only the Primarch, but to the Warsmith. And then the 3rd member is relatively new to the Trident at the time of the Horus Heresy, or as he was promoted during the Horus Heresy. His name was Kroger, and Kroger was an interesting character in that he was literally just a gang fighter who accidentally became promoted to one of the most important positions in the entire Legion. Yeah, exactly.
He was just a dude.
He was literally just a dude. He was a line soldier. He was not he wasn't even a warsmith at the point. He wasn't in charge of a unit. He wasn't important at all. He literally, okay, let's back this up a little bit. Back it up to about 4 years into the Horus Heresy.
Right.
The Iron Warriors are laying siege to this Imperial Fist stronghold on the middle of fucking nowhere. And Kroger was the only member of his company to get onto the walls. He got onto the walls, and he was engaged with the Imperial Fists. He took out 4, 5, 6 Imperial Fists, and he was getting pinned down. And then all of a sudden, a Thunderbird just swoops down, Thunderhawk, whatever the ships are called, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Swoops down and just touches the landing of the wall. And Perturabo comes out with his personal bodyguard of robots. We didn't talk about that. The Iron Circle is 7 or 8. I think it's 8. Basically battle robots that Perturabo built himself that follow him everywhere.
Right.
So Perturabo and the Iron Circle land on this wall and kill everybody else. And Kroger's just like, "Hi, cool. I'm Kroger. Nice to meet you. I'm your soldier." And Perturabo's like, "Cool. You're a member of the Trident now, because you're basically a street fighter, and I want that right now."
Hey, question.
Yes.
Are these robots technically considered artificial intelligence?
Yeah, kinda. Limited. Very limited.
Okay. Alright. So, it's literally just, it's Perturabo, it's Perturabo, nerd, weirdo, and just some dude.
Yeah, pretty much.
These 4 dudes would make up the Trident.
Yeah. Yeah. So Kroger, during the Siege of Terra, fuck me. During the Siege of Terra, Kroger had an interesting conversation with Karn of the World Eaters, and Karn was just like, as all World Eaters were at this point, but Karn retained a bit of his consciousness, more so longer than his brothers. But Karn was like, "You have the mark of the Blood God on you," and Kroger was like, "The fuck does that mean?" So throughout this conversation, Karn literally puts his arm. So they're talking about Kroger should basically follow Khorne, the god of blood.
Yeah.
And
violence.
And Kroger was like, "What more could this give me? Like, I don't understand the benefits of pledging myself to some greater power." And Karn puts his hand through a fucking tank, and he jumps like 16 feet in the air, and then cuts that tank in half with his chain sword, with his chain axe, and then like Kroger's like, "Cool, yeah, so I'm gonna do that," and fell to Khorne pretty much immediately.
So in order, Karn just kind of was like, "You should try this. You should like, join me, brother. Worship Khorne." Oh, like he's like, "But why though?" And then Karn proceeds to do incredibly excessive OP shit, and then Kroger is like, "That's Titus. That's very cash money of you. I'm gonna start worshiping Khorne now."
That's pretty much exactly how that went.
I hope and pray that someone animates my explanations of this, because I feel like it would be much funnier being seen.
Yes, I agree. Wow, what entertainment. So that was the Trident. That would help Perturabo lead the Siege of Terra.
Right.
The siege would continue for months and months and months. Perturabo and Khorne and fucking Dorn. Wow.
Hey, shout out to last episode.
Shut up! I knew you were gonna say that. Perturabo and Dorn would continue to play 8D chess for months and months and months until the siege basically ran out of time. The Lion, Gilliman, and the Space Wolves also all came to Terra's rescue, and the siege was broken.
Right.
So Perturabo would lead his legion back into the Eye of Terror, and they would settle in the fortress world of Merengard, Medrengard.
Yes.
Medrengard. Medrengard. Yes.
Yes.
Confusing etymology.
Yes.
But
40K in a nutshell.
But before, I think I could be getting this mixed up now. Before this, they settled on Medrengard. Perturabo issued a challenge out to Dorn, saying, "Hey, if you beat me here on this inconspicuous planet that I've never been on before, ever, I promise, then you're obviously better." So Dorn was like, "Okay, that's fucking weird, but okay." So he deploys the Imperial Fists, most of the Imperial Fists, by the way, onto this iron cage, and Perturabo spent a long time building this intricate series of traps and puzzles, and it was a bad time.
It was called the Eternal Fortress. The reason it's called, I have Lexicanum open, I'm going to be a stickler just this once and never again. It was called the Iron Cage because Dorn said that he would bring back Perturabo in an iron cage.
Wow, that's stupid.
Yeah. I don't know why it's called the Eternal Fortress and not the Iron Cage, because the Iron Cage sounds much cooler.
Yeah, and it fits their theme of putting iron in front of everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, most of the Imperial Fists would die over the course of this engagement. So much so that they barely had a chapter's worth of men at the end of it.
Right.
So because before this, by the way, Rowboat Girly Boy wrote his Index Astartes.
He wrote the space book. Astartes. He wrote the space book.
Yeah, he wrote the big book of space shit. And Dorn was like, "That's stupid. I have all these men behind me. My legion's huge. Look how big my legion is." Why would I want to divide them into units of 1,000 men? And then at the end, he's like, shit, we only have like 1,000 men left. Fuck. They became Codex compliant by accident. So then they would fall into the Eye of Terror, and they would become the tyrants of Medrengard.
Yeah.
And then some whack shit would go on.
Yes.
During the course of the Iron Cage, I believe, not Fulgrim. Fuck me! Perturabo would become a demon prince. He would ascend to demonhood.
Right.
Of Chaos Undivided, because that was a choice, I guess, that nobody else picked. Except Lorgar. It's interesting. And
also technically Kurz.
Nah, Kurz didn't give a fuck.
Kurz didn't last long enough.
No, exactly. Let's bring this up, though, because it's an interesting distinction between Chaos Undivided of the Iron Warriors and Chaos Undivided of the Word Bearers. Because they looked at Chaos as different things. Right. So, Lorgar and the Word Bearers were reverent. They prayed to all four gods. They held the Octet as holy iconography, and they worshipped all gods unilaterally. They believe that, in like any, if you look at any polytheistic religion of human,
it's like no one god sits above the other.
Right,
They're all equal elements
they all
of
respect,
humanity.
You might have a guy or two that worships one more than the other, but as a general rule, they all hold all these chaos gods reverently. Now, the Iron Warriors, on the other hand, didn't, for the most part. There were exceptions, obviously, but they used the chaos gods not as a source of worship, but as a means to the ends. They used chaos not as a theistic extension of themselves. They used it as another weapon. They used it to bend machinery to their will, to insert demons into tanks and all kinds of siege guns and siege towers, because they saw it as another weapon to use, another tool in the arsenal. And it's an important distinction to know that Lorgar may be a demon Primarch of Chaos Undivided, and Perturabo may be a demon Primarch of Chaos Undivided, but the manner in which they utilized chaos as a religion is very, very different.
It's the difference between reverence and it's where Perturabo became a Primarch of Chaos because instead of Lorgar becomes a Primarch of Chaos because of his dedication as a means of becoming closer to his gods. Perturabo became a demon Primarch of Chaos to essentially become bigger and stronger and more powerful, because chaos isn't a thing to be worshipped or feared, it is a tool. And just like every other tool, the more you use it, the better you get with it.
Right.
So it's just philosophical outlooks of a religion.
Yeah. It's either you're using it to make yourself feel better, or you're using it to maintain some sort of end. Right.
I'm looking at pictures of demon engines. These are awesome as fuck.
Yeah, right? They're metal as shit.
Okay. Let's talk about these for a minute, because I think these are really cool.
Yeah, sure.
Because we're gonna have to talk. So, demon engines, for those of you who don't know, are basically rituals are performed on different things like tanks or giant city-sized robots or whatever particular item is trying to be demonized. And so a demon, a being of the warp, is put inside of this thing, and then it takes direct control. And so it takes tanks and giant robots, and it adds depending on which demon, it adds more organic thematic bits to it. And so with the end result being essentially mechanical dragon creatures and giant titans with giant city-sized mechanical titans with pustules and veins and legions of little swarming crawly things all over it. It's really cool. It's really cool. I love it so much.
Yeah, they're very interesting. And even even like Hell Brutes, I think they're called. Hell Brutes are like, so a dreadnought is essentially when a battle brother, when a Astartes gets basically killed, when he's beyond any kind of redemption,
right?
And he's compatible with a suit of armor called Dreadnought or Dreadnought plate. They insert his consciousness and whatever's left of his organic material into the Dreadnought, and he becomes this Dreadnought. It's still him, kinda. He remains conscious, and it's still his personality in this machine, but it's very, distant. It's very metallic. It's very mechanized.
Yeah.
And this is usually done with the consent of the Astartes, and he becomes one with the machine. A Hell Brute, on the other hand, is when they bind unwillingly a individual into basically Dreadnought plate against their will, and they kind of form a dual consciousness between this individual and the demon that hosts inside the plate. Right. So it's like a penitent engine almost, Adeptus Sororitas, mixed with Dreadnought armor, and it's really fucking scary to think about, because you are trapped inside this fucking thing against your will, and you have to kill, because the demon that's whispering in your fucking head the whole time is telling you to kill things. It's kind of fucked up.
Yep.
Most of this stuff you could just summarize by saying it's kind of fucked up. Moving on to it's kind of fucked up, let's talk about Hansu a little bit. Hansu's kind of fucked up. Hansu was the successor to the Warsmith. He was a Warsmith after the heresy.
Right.
He was important on Medrengard. He is Anisius. What word am I looking for? Fucking terrible. Go ahead. You could take this one from me.
Hansu is responsible for one of the worst things to ever happen in 40k ever, called the Damunculaba. So, the Iron Warriors, after they fled to Medrengard, had a hard time getting their hands on enough gene seed and people to continue to grow their legion, like most Chaos Marines did. Most Chaos Legions have tried to tackle the problem of being unable to recruit from homeworlds or from other worlds for varying reasons. The Iron Warriors, notably Hansu, decided to solve this with the worst possible option. So the Damunculaba was an attempt to create more Iron Warriors. So on the planet of Medrengard, the Chaos Demon world of Medrengard, Warsmith Hansu gathered up women from the planet and essentially force fed them nutrients until they were essentially giant sacks of meat, and then he would force heretical chaos magoses to use science and chaos to turn them into essentially living incubators where they could essentially, so they could take people and they could implant. So that what they would do is, in order to put someone through the process by which the gene seed affects their bodies, they would take a person of, normal Astartes recruiting age, which is usually somewhere between, I believe, young to early to mid teens, and they would take that guy, they would
12
take that
to
random
16.
dude. Yeah. Oh, anyone below 16 was fair game. Forgot about that. Oh yeah, that makes this much worse. So they would essentially take all, any eligible human 16-year-old males, and then put them inside of the giant mutant living mutant flesh sack women thing in a process that the wiki describes as, and I quote, a reverse C-section. So this new recruit will gestate in there with the new gene seed in them for several days until the new candidate essentially had to claw themselves out of the Homunculaba, who, again, I'd like to remind you, is still alive, still a breathing, living person that has been bloated to essentially become a living birth sack. And this new Astartes was born without skin because the gene seed, A, the gene seed is corrupted, and B, some kind of flaw within it made it so that the skin wouldn't grow with the person's natural skin wouldn't grow. So they would take the skin from the Homunculaba itself, and they would make skin suits for these new space marines if they survived and passed the trial of not being mutated, because the Iron Warriors believe that chaos is a tool, and if you show any signs of mutation, that means that you were reckless with the tool. So if any of these new recruits came out mutated in any way, they essentially flushed them down the toilet. That's what they did. They flushed them down the toilet, and so anyone who wasn't flushed down the toilet was given a new skin suit made from the skin of their weird womb mother thing and made into an Iron Warrior. And that was how
so believably uncomfortable.
The mutants that ended up getting flushed down the toilet formed tribes and would essentially wander around. Yeah, the unfleshed, the tribes of mutants that wandered around Medrengard were instrumental in the destruction of the Homunculaba.
Fair enough. I don't blame that for a second. Now, if my memory serves right, Uriel Ventress, captain of the Ultramarines' 4th Company, was the one responsible for destroying the Homunculaba.
Yeah.
And in this act, Hansu swore like a blood debt upon Uriel Ventress, which he would never rest until Ventress was dead by his hand.
Right.
Which is one way to go about that, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Uriel Ventress should have fucking put a sword through Hansu's neck, but, you know.
I want to point out that I actually read parts of the book this came from. So, in the book, it is mentioned that the space, Pausanias Lysane and Uriel Ventress, this was so bad that these two veteran Ultramarines were disgusted, and they cried when they found out, they saw what happened. Two grown-ass veteran super soldiers cried at the sight at what they saw when they saw the Homunculaba. And when they saw the Unfleshed, and when the Unfleshed told them what they were and how they came about. Because some of the Unfleshed, they were melted. They spoke like sloths from the Goonies, but they remembered what they were.
Oh, fuck me.
Yeah. The Homunculaba is one of the worst things that humanity has done.
Yeah, I agree. Holy fuck.
In this one way, Perturabo is worse than Fulgrim.
Yes.
Because Fulgrim dedicated himself wholeheartedly to this orgy thing, and Fulgrim and the Emperor's Children they operate on, like, demonic compulsion. This was practical. There was a reason for this. This was seen as a not only necessary, but a completely feasible and reasonable objective thing to do.
Yeah, regardless of the cost.
Yeah. And that's the Homunculaba.
God damn it. I would rather fucking chew glass than talk about the Homunculaba anymore. So we're moving on.
Yes.
Members of the Iron Warriors eventually joined Abaddon's Black Legion. And if they didn't, they still remained on fairly good terms with Abaddon.
Right.
And would join him in his Black Crusades. Outside of that, Perturabo remains on Medrengard. He is a fully fledged Demon Primarch now. he is still a douchebag.
Yeah, but now he's just really big.
Now he's just big, and yeah, that's really it.
Yeah. There's not really... I know Perturabo has, like, a book dedicated to him, and that's how we know his whole story about his time on Olympia.
Yeah, yeah.
But I feel like there should be more on Perturabo.
Yeah, I mean, reading The Siege of Terra provides very good insight on his character.
Yeah.
And, like, reading one of the books about him, I can't even remember it anymore, but it's the book with Kroger where they mention his character is very interesting.
Yes.
So yeah, the Hansu, other than that, no real important Iron Warriors.
It's kind of sad, actually. Like, aside from the Iron Warriors that basically... Yeah, aside from the Iron Warriors who were just kind of on the Siege of Terra, there's just nothing really...
Right.
Oh, there's a Warsmith that apparently tried to send a Space Hulk full of Tyranids to Terra. Yeah. Warsmith...
That's funny.
Yeah, Warsmith Sean too.
That is actually really funny.
Yeah, where he was just like, I have an idea. I'm going to break this siege with a bunch of fucking bugs because you know what? Historically, there's a precedent for taking uncontrollable insect, like releasing basically ultimate locusts upon your enemy. That absolutely is a thing that absolutely works. Moses did it that one time. Yes.
No, Moses did it to the Pharaoh.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was expecting the apothecary on the Lexicanon page to have more than like a single paragraph dedicated to him. It's
no. There is very little actual media written about the Iron Warriors. Because they're traitors and nobody buys traitor books because they're not. I cannot wait.
We're just gonna spend the entire time just kind of shitting on the Ultramarines for their video.
Yeah, we are. Fuck Rowboat Gilly Boy and his goddamn blue boys, his space blue boys. He made Rome. He made Rome in space. Yes. It's not interesting.
So, if I may engage in more opinion stuff. And based on what you've told me about the lore, the Iron Warriors with their kind of methodical means to an end kind of thinking were like, I believe I mentioned before how you said that each of the Primarchs are based off of like a different part of the Emperor. So Perturabo, I feel, is based off of the Emperor's just like. Perturabo and Dorn are two halves of a singular whole. That's why they fight so hard, because build stuff and break stuff requires an intense amount of knowledge. Like the kind of from what you're telling me about like how the Iron Warriors had Stone Rot, who could look at the ground and touch the ground and figure out the optimal method of trench that could be dug in that spot. That requires an intensive amount of engineering knowledge, and also, to be able to destroy something effectively, you have to understand how it works. And so, that's how Perturabo was. That's how Perturabo, despite being focused on siege breaking, was able to construct the Eternal Fortress. Because to understand, continue.
He had pages and pages of unbuilt palace architecture designs. He had blueprints for infinitely. There was one where he made the blueprint of a machine that ran
motion machine
itself, like perpetual motion. And he had Vulcan actually make it for him, and he had it, and then he smashed Fulgrim's face on.
That's not the hammer.
Yeah.
No.
No.
Right.
No, it's an interesting story. It's basically during the Angel Exterminatus book campaign, whatever. Fulgrim was like, "Hey, I'm gonna tell you a story of this awesome fucking weapon. You're gonna fucking love me for this shit. But I'm not gonna tell you the story until you make me a goddamn coliseum for me to tell you this story in." And Perturabo's like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Just tell me the story now, you idiot." And Fulgrim's like, "But there's no pizzazz in that."
Like,
so Perturabo built a whole fucking stadium so that Fulgrim could tell him this shitty story about a fake-ass weapon.
that is hilarious. Also, can we briefly mention how Perturabo canonically plays not StarCraft?
Oh, yeah. So Fulgrim kind of... No, Fulgrim fucking damn it. So yes. Perturabo plays like a simulated war game with his sons and shit, where it's literally just like StarCraft, Warhammer 40,000, like Dawn of War 2.
That's what he unearthed with Magnus.
And he plays it to simulate outcomes.
That's what he found on all those trips with Magnus. He was piecing together
and
a Steam key for the last digital copy of Dawn of War 2. It takes a whole freaking room of cogitators to run just one copy of Dawn of War 2 at, like, medium settings.
Right. Something a fucking potato computer can do now.
So, Perturabo, being a giant strategy nerd, does strategy nerd things regularly with his men in order to flex on them to show how much better of a strategy nerd he is. So Perturabo is that guy on all of the TG/TG, the traditional games threads and all the Reddit stories. Perturabo is that guy. He is the guy who shows up and gets his minis on everything and gets his greasy hands all over the minis that you painted for hours. He is the guy who owns all of the codexes, including yours, and specifically reads out the rules to your codex as you play to ensure that he wins. And he is the guy who gets so angry when you lose that he just straight up flips the table and crushes all your minis with his sledgehammer.
Yep.
And so Perturabo made an army of that guys because his whole goal was to make... That was Perturabo's plan this whole time, because he didn't believe... Because in his opinion, the Iron Legion and their wars of attrition were not efficient enough to his standards. And so he had them beat each other to death in an outcome that... I'd like to ask a question. Perturabo, big brain, ultra math, ultra genius that he is, could he not have done something to, like, skew probability so that specific soldiers were killed, or did he just do that at random? Right.
I mean, but he probably could if he really cared. Yeah, this is arch daddy issues.
And so it's funny because Perturabo spends his whole time on Olympia complaining about the father that he doesn't have and how he doesn't belong here, when the Tyrant of Damokos does... The Tyrant of Damokos is still a tyrant and he's still using Perturabo to his own ends, but he's also trying to some extent to be a decent parent. Not like a good parent, but like the Emperor did. Yeah, he actually praises Perturabo for his work. So Perturabo this whole time was getting a lot of well done sons and you're doing a good jobs while he was making his weapons. But at the same time, Perturabo was like, "You're not my real dad. If you were my real dad." Yeah,
if he wasn't such an insatiable douchebag,
he probably would have done better.
Then would have been great.
But he wasn't, because the thing about being the cold engine of logic is that the cold engine of logic needs to operate on like, the cold machine engine of logic needs to operate on definitive results. Like, when, like, there isn't like, you, like, when someone operates like that, you have to be constantly like, you're doing a good job, this is good, because their feedback input is required. Because without input, there is no direction. Without a direction, there is no set goal. So Perturabo, from like a psychological standpoint, was wired to kind of need the constant, yes, this is good. Keep doing this. This is good. Do something else. Perturabo, in his cold, like, the thing that he lacked all this time was, like, human input. Because that was something that Dorn had that he didn't. Because Dorn grew up essentially as a member of the royal family where he had advisors. And even though he was smarter and more skilled than all of them, it's good to have input even for simple emotion reasons. Like, people need to be told that they're doing a good job. Perturabo is an example of what happens when you need that way too much. And also, he could literally just see space hell open in front of him all the time. That has to do something to you.
That didn't help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
Poor fucker.
Because well, most of these stories are sad, except for Dorn's.
I think
it is sad.
Most of this shit is kind of sad, yeah. Dorn's is good. Gilliman's is good. Everybody else is fucking
and they all
depressed.
came out of it like. I feel like this is a thing that exists somewhere, but like someone needs. I feel like the Primarchs are definitively human, despite having.
Yes, they are. No, they aren't even human.
Yeah.
They're more than human, because I'm not talking about like a superhuman level. I'm talking about they're more emotionally vulnerable than most.
I assume people. Their brains function hot. They're able to organize armies at the age of like 5 months old. So it stands to reason that they'd be much more sensitive, and they need I feel like that's a very big flaw to put in your super soldiers. Just being very, very, very emotionally needy. Yeah.
Right. I mean, aren't we all, though?
In conclusion, Perturabo, I like Perturabo. Like, out of all the Primarchs, I like Vulcan, but I like Perturabo, but I understand Perturabo a little more, because I remember there was a point when I was younger, when I was very, the problem with Perturabo is suffering from a larger and more dramatic version of what I personally like to refer to as overachiever, as the overachiever brain, where it's like you constantly need to be told that you're doing the right thing, that what you're doing is excellent, and that all of your ideas are great, and you need that constantly, because if you don't get it, then obviously you're doing something wrong, and nobody understands you, and the whole world is against you, and then you start spiraling out of control. So in conclusion,
and he's written like that for a reason. You make the joke often in our own passing, in which Perturabo is just the fan insert character, because that's what so many of us feel. Yeah. And I think it's.
I made that joke because he plays RTS games. He's the only Primarch to notably play video games. Aside from Magnus. We don't know what Magnus did in this free time. Nerd.
Aside from Magnus, you fucking nerd. You red-skinned, one-eyed fucking weirdo. Perturabo is the one
science nerd. Yes.
He is the science nerd. You're the book nerd. Fuck you.
Yeah.
God damn.
For entirely different reasons.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
For entirely different reasons. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
I think we're good. Yep. Slightly longer episode than Fulgrim's, because fuck Fulgrim.
Yeah, we don't need to analyze Fulgrim. Fulgrim is just super horny all the time. This could use much more analysis. Perturabo fell to chaos of his own volition in fear of a mistake that he made, as opposed to Fulgrim, who fell to chaos because the demon's sword told him to. Yeah, it's much more interesting to see contrast Perturabo's fall to Fulgrim's fall, because Fulgrim's fall is it's a very fantasy thing of like, the sword, it's talking to me, it tells me things, it's telling me to kill, and I listen to it. Perturabo falls to Horus in the first place because he made mistakes, and those mistakes led to a drastic, unfixable situation that he decided to fix in the most in a very, what one would consider emotional way, which is basically, you don't listen to me, I'm going to scrub you from the planet. And so, in his wake of what have we done, he listened to Horus, because everyone liked Horus at this point.
Yeah, that's what Horus is. Horus talked very nicely to people, especially those who needed to be needed to be talked nicely to.
Perturabo is a much more, like, from a literary standpoint as well, Perturabo is much more about, like, it's not about, like, the fall of it's not like a psychopath becoming a psychopath because he believes destiny is horrible, or a guy falling to a demon sword. It's a guy, it's a nerd, like, it's a scientist who tried to fix everything with logic, who tried to find logical solutions to illogical problems, and at the end, he fell, it broke him, and he fell to the person who gave him answers that he could understand. It's very, very human.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's very
real.
real.
That is why Perturabo was awesome.
That is why Perturabo is awesome. I agree. Next episode is Jagged Khan.
That's gonna be so short.
Am I? Is that right? Am I correct in thinking we're gonna dedicate a whole episode to fucking Jagged Khan?
We do too, because these episodes have been fairly short. What if we just double them up?
This was an hour and 10 minutes.
What
are you talking about?
Well, that's because we went to the whole literary thing of Perturabo, because Perturabo is written good. But there's, like, nothing about the Khan.
Not me actually seeing to make sure I'm correct and seeing that it's fucking Jagged Khan. Yeah, they're Legion number 5. Fuck
That's
me.
gonna be a short episode. And that's sad.
Yeah, I guess. That's sad. I'll read his book to make sure I know what I'm talking about, because Lord knows I don't know a goddamn thing about the White Scars.
And they go fast.
Other than that, they're Mongolian. I have not read. I skipped over every single one of their Horus Heresy books. I saw Jagged on the cover. I was like, that's not important. God damn! I wish I rethought that. Now.
Yes.
Nothing against Jagged Khan.
And also, they don't really have a lot
just
written about them, which is sad because they have a lot of potential to be really cool.
Yeah. Right. There is 3 or 4. There's 2 or 3, maybe 4. Right. Horus Heresy books about them, and then there's
Warlord
the Primarch book I
is
think is out, and that's yes, it is. Okay, good.
Cool.
Okay, I'll read that.
I'm just gonna do what I always do and read Lexicon.
Okay.
Because I can't afford all of these books, man.
Yes, fair enough. I bring the lore,
Together
you
we
bring
make
the
one
hams.
Podcast.
Yes.
The hams.
Ordo Dracos, we bring the hams.
All right.
Okay, with that, we are going to sign off. Everybody have a great night.
Imperator.
Ave Imperator.